Matt, maybe I'm just losing touch. I don't think I have a good sense of what's going to be a hit product anymore. Like, I thought Chromebooks would be a total flop, and now they're doing better than ever. They're doing so good now. We have these HDMI sticks are going crazy. And
yeah.
No, what? I mean,
if you want to touch on that now, I can kind of share my thoughts.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Okay, I mean, I think the without getting too deep into it, I think it really comes down to remember Zombu. Remember the promise of Zombu. Garbage hardware with a really cool idea. Basically, it was like Gen 2 with a twist. People really liked that idea, and having experienced it, when I saw Chromebooks come about, the idea of that, if most of their stuff is stored in something that they can basically set their, it's idiot proof, it's essentially, and I use air quotes for this, virus malware free.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
It's basically it's what should have been happening all the friggin' long. I mean, it's like I watch Apple and Microsoft do this for years, and it's like it's 2015 and their products are still stupid easy to break. Really easy.
So that's true. This is dumb. This is like dumb, like easy. But aren't
people
we
like easy? So,
how do we avoid like? So here's what I'm looking at, Matt. Is that so you use this a little hindsight here? I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4. If you 5, so now with the Chromebits, 5 different manufacturers of these that are 6. Sorry. 7 manufacturers that have products that are coming out to the market right now. One of them is Google. One of them is Intel. Obviously, those ones probably have the biggest chance of succeeding. But this is getting awfully complicated. This is looking like a mess and another race to the bottom.
It is a race to the bottom in a sense, but it's also catering to the market of people that are currently...
What people, though? We haven't seen anybody that wants to do this yet. Do you really think people want to burn an HDMI port on their TV? Because first of all, who has enough HDMI ports on their TV? I don't.
Well, I think the stick's an idiot idea. Now, to be clear on that, I think that's. I mean, that's not necessarily true. If it would work on a monitor, not a television,
lots of monitors have HDMI. Yeah.
Yeah, then that would make sense. But if you're plugging it into a TV, it's just stupid beyond imagination. I mean, it's not an Android device that would actually allow you to participate in media.
I don't know. I mean, you got a Plex. You put Plex on there and up in that business.
Yeah,
it works on the Fire Stick. So.
But there's the divide between geek and casual users is wider than ever, and it's getting to a point where it's making me scream because it's like the reason why the Linux on the desktop continues to drag its knuckles, in my opinion, is because people dig in harder and harder, and they become archier and archier, and it's it just isn't that hard and herpa, and it's like it's not that hard for me to change my oil, know how to do it, not going to, I mean, lots of people know how to do lots of things, but it doesn't mean everyone wants to do that.
All right,
not everyone wants to learn.
What do you think, Rodden?
Yeah. I was just going to say that the HDMI sticks are fantastic if it's like an embedded device, like a media device or something.
Sure.
But if your entire computer is
that could be cool.
That's going to where it falls short.
Daredevil, are you going to add something?
I think Canonical, because they already are dealing with conversions, are going to be the most to benefit from this. Because think about it. Your Ubuntu device is... People are already there was it was mainly Linux focused. The will to get an Ubuntu device that you can maybe dock it and have your desktop.
Matt,
that's the business side.
Matt, Google's going to roll this, isn't it?
Well, see, here's the problem. It's like, I mean, I would say for post Google, like people that are not going to participate in the Google atmosphere, yes.
Yeah.
The Ubuntu stuff will absolutely rock and roll. For the other 99.9% of society, no. It just no one, especially here in the States. Now, I will say that in Canada or overseas, yes. But,
yeah. What can the device give to you? What is Google giving to you? Google wants you to keep doing things online. Ubuntu wants you to have the decision.
Right.
They get marketing.
But that hasn't prevented everybody from buying every Chromebook under the sun.
Yeah. I mean, because at the end of the day, I would get more value from an Ubuntu device, so as would you, of course.
Sure. All of us would.
But unfortunately, when I turn on my television set, or I don't have cable, but if I go to someone's house with cable, it's a Google commercial, or it's Google stuff. It's all marketing. That's where Linux and still falls down.
How much more easier is it for you as a geek in the family, give one of these little devices and say, hey, plug it on the TV, versus giving them a computer with Linux installed and being the maintainer?
That'll be our mission. That will be our call.
That's a good I think that's a good grassroots approach, because that's the only way you can combat this stuff.
Think about this. Really is think about the opportunity here as more and more monitors get HDMI ports. That old family call when you go over there for the holidays and fix up their Windows PC, and then later it was convince them to install Linux. Now you just go over to you'll go to their house. You'll bring one of these HDMI things that's costing you $60 or whatever they're going to cost. Totally ready to go, all set up. up, you sit down, you plug
Yeah.
into their old monitor, and when you leave, you take their old PC with you. And they're going to have a quad-core ARM thing with 2 to 4 gigabytes of RAM and 64 gigabytes of storage, and you're going to have them store everything up on some cloud storage that you like, and everybody's going to be happy.
Well, and the sad part of it is that Google could be beaten tomorrow if boots on the ground would pull their heads out of their butts and actually get these devices in the hands of people. That's all it takes. Boots on the ground. But, we're not there yet. That's the problem.
Ryan, you wanted to add something maybe you say is a bit controversial.
Well, actually, I was just wanted to bring up a topic that maybe we could cover today, and that is whether or not Microsoft will buy a Linux company.
Whoa. All right. Well, why don't we get to that in a little bit? I think the answer is no. There you go.
I think it's easier for them to just open a Linux division, as they probably already have to contribute to the hypervisor, than buying a company.
I think Microsoft would rather only ship software for iOS than touch the GPL that much. But I mean, they'll dabble with it for drivers and things like that. But I don't think they'd ever ship a product based on GPL.
They would as a sock puppet. As a sock puppet scenario, yes, they would. Not publicly. They would.
They
operate
have
the shell.
so many legal cases that they have brought against so many companies for their use of Linux and intellectual properties. Maybe because they technically own that stuff, they would actually be just fine to use it. So maybe, I don't know. It just seems like it would bring a lot of things into question.
In Washington, they're one of the big Linux hiring people right now. Just saying.
This comes up because I was watching how much they're cuddling up close. And I'm sorry to derail the topic. I think that the Chrome bits are a non-starter, but they're cuddling up real close to Ubuntu with their cloud offerings. And maybe they just have to do that because Ubuntu is a big player in those deployment and those situations. But it just got me thinking.
Wouldn't you say if they were going to buy up a Linux vendor, it would be OpenSUSE? First of all, OpenSUSE is
OpenSUSE has a lot of government incentive right now not to be sold.
OpenSUSE, though, has a very strong relationship with Microsoft. They have existing collaboration research labs, or at least they used to. And additionally, they have a lot of great contracts like Walmart that Microsoft would love to be involved in. A lot of those contracts were sold in conjunction with the Microsoft virtualization platform. So they really go hand in hand. SUSE is often sold as like, if you want to use a Microsoft platform but have Linux virtual machines, use Hyper-V and SUSE Enterprise inside the virtual machine. And it's really been like the package. So it'd be a great fit for Microsoft. Plus, to be honest with you, if you followed at all what's happening with the parent companies of OpenSUSE and SUSE Enterprise, I mean, aren't they owned now by a company that does mainframe interface software? I can't remember now.
Yeah, but let's talk about cloud services and what's been deployed. Ubuntu has been deployed all over the place.
I think Amazon would never
own that.
I don't think Amazon would ever let Microsoft take Ubuntu away. There's too much EC2 running on top of Ubuntu. There's too many other services running on top of Ubuntu.
At that point, they will just fork. It's always the fork option.
I think if Microsoft was going to ever buy a Linux distribution, I think it's got to be Novell because it's got to be Novell. It's got to be Open. It's got to be SUSE because they have all those deals from the Novell era. Yeah, it seems like that would be the natural fit. I don't think they'd ever buy a Linux distribution.
I don't think they'd ever buy it. I think they would basically do what they do with a lot of things, and it's a kind of a Disney Star Wars kind of scenario where you start off by infusing capital into something. I could see that being much more hands-off.
You know what I would see it as is I would see it as a custom distro built to run on Azure. It'd be like the Azure Linux. It'd be like the Azure Linux reference platform or something, and it would be like Linux as an API on Azure. Like abstract yourself away from all of the challenges of Linux, and we'll have a managed Linux system for you on Azure, and then eventually you'll be able to spin that up on a Hyper-V server on your own local LAN when they make the on-premises version.
Chris, we're doing it in your jokey voice. I don't think after kind of following them recently and thinking about it from this point of view, I don't think it'd be all that crazy if they did play somehow with Azure in the Linux game, and if that's a purchase or if that's just a really close partnership with somebody, I wouldn't. None of it would surprise me.
They have the Azure stats. They're gonna. I mean, maybe if anybody in the chat room has a link, maybe Microsoft publishes it. But I think they have a pretty respectable amount of Linux instances running on Azure right now. So they're going to watch that, and they're going to know how many of those are Ubuntu kernels, how many of those are Red Hat Enterprise Linux kernels or CentOS or whatever the hell Microsoft offers. and they're going to be watching those numbers, and they got to be thinking, well, geez, I don't really want to make Azure a platform to make Ubuntu a more dominant cloud platform. I mean, that's got to be on their mind, right? That's
exactly where I was coming from. I saw some stats. I'm not sure they were the final stats or anything, but they had a ton of Linux, installations. And I have to think that the decision makers see that and they're like, well, I don't know that we're going to unseat this with Windows. So that's where my speculation comes from. And so I thought I would just have that conversation with you because I think it's an interesting one to have.
Yeah, good point. And, if it ever happens, somebody will find this clip up from episode 87 and be like, wow, Ryan totally called it.
Yeah, that looked good on my track history.
Welcome to Linux Unplugged, your weekly Linux talk show that's speed testing all of the mirrors like a maniac. My name is Chris.
And my name is Matt.
Hey there, Matt. It's the first thing I got to do after I get a new installation is I get the reflector package installed, and then I go test all of the mirrors, and I got to make sure that I got to make sure I'm getting the best speed possible, right? And of course, for all I know, it's like random look at the draw that night. That's what the routes happen to work out, and I got a good connection. I could be getting like a horrible server for all I know, but I feel like if I make that as my first maneuver after a fresh install, then I'm setting myself up for the best speed for all the rest of the packages I have to pull down.
I think it also sets a tone for how the rest of your experience is going to end up.
I am optimizing for performance, man. Performance.
Absolutely.
So this week on the Linux Unplugged show, after we get through some follow-up for some very interesting stories that actually managed to break between Sunday and Tuesday that are relevant to things and topics we have followed up on and covered on this show for a long time. We'll cover those real quick, plus a real quick Linux Fest Northwest update coming up, and then the new Dell XPS 13 Developer Edition, the version of the laptop that I bought, but is actually targeted for Linux users. We'll tell you about that and maybe what's the difference and sort of something they've done differently and why us US purchasers are going to be a little jelly. So that'll be coming up. And then later in the show, I'll talk about my number one boo, my baby, my bae. I think that's actually what the kids say now. It's my Linux rig. My number one office workstation died over the weekend.
Ooh.
And I might have gotten bit by a bug that a lot of you could get bit by if you are upgrading to kernel 3.19 and you use btrfs. So I'll tell you about that coming up in the show and get everybody's input on what I should do on a fresh install because I'm kind of curious. I'm going totally different file systems, totally different hard drive setup, different software stack to some degree. So I'll tell you about what I've done so far and what some of the great advice I've gotten, some of the packages that I've loved people have submitted to our subreddit that I should install. So all of that will be coming up, including the case for my new file system, which I think you guys may be interested in. And then in the latter half of the show, a couple of guys from, don't call it the Evolve OS project, no, call it Solus? Well, I'll get the actual pronunciation from them coming up in a little bit. That's right, the very distro we talked about last week ran into some troubles, and it was no April Fool's, at least I don't think. And they've had to rename their project and rename their community, and we'll get the straight skinny on them and what happens when a little distro gets the hard legal, the hard hand of the law, the legal strong arm, whatever the hell that is. So it's a big. This is. I know you call this unplugged, Matt. This feels pretty plugged, but that tells
it feels quite plugged. It also feels like they almost got plugged.
We'll find out.
Legally speaking, anyhow.
Hey-oh. That's a good one, Matt. I just want to cover a couple of really quick follow-up stories before we jump into some of the topics. On this Sunday's Linux Action Show, we got to see Noah go behind the scenes on some of his client calls and resolve some wireless issues, and all using Linux and supporting Linux in these businesses. And go figure, of course, timing had to be the way it is. One of the software's packages that we featured in there for managing the Wi-Fi, Ubiquity, has come out and getting in trouble for GPL violation. This is a post over at libertybsd.net. And there we go. Get it nice and framed for you guys in the video version. And they've identified a couple of different ways that they appear to be maybe even willfully violating the GPL. I haven't totally looked into this yet, but I just want to give you a disclaimer. As a piece of software we did mention in the show yesterday, there has been a bit of hoopla that came up as a result, and so I want to make the audience aware for it, and I'll have a link to that in the show notes. If you saw Ubiquity, which looked pretty awesome, and Matt, I don't know if you caught the piece that Noah did, but in there he's using Ubiquity to essentially, I believe, centrally manage a bunch of Wi-Fi access points and create one flat Wi-Fi network where access points are distributed throughout a hotel building, but it's all one continuous network, so people can move around and they automatically can provision each other and increase and decrease signal strength, so there's not too much overlap. And
wow,
yeah, it's a pretty amazing piece of software, but it seems to keep falling into problems. So actually, it looks like Vertinda has used this before, so let's bring in the Mumble Room. Hey, Mumble Room, time of propes, greetings, and welcome to Linux Unplugged. Hey, guys.
Greetings.
Hello.
So let's start with Vert there. So Vert, you've used this before, and no, we're not talking about the Ubuntu installer, are we? Vert, that was your cue, man. You said you had something to say.
Yeah, I'm sorry. No, I have used it before in a private school with a friend of mine who's the IT manager. And the cool thing about Ubiquity, apart from the price and the reliability of it mainly, is it does have this really quite nice management console that's available for Windows and for Linux. And it gives you things like, one-click deployment and automatic configuration and stuff like that. The only thing that I was a little bit concerned about, though, is how it does this, because the only way it can possibly do it out of the box when you take one of these new devices and you put it on the network is it must have some sort of SSH key that the server uses to log into whichever device it finds to be able to configure it properly. Because it seems to automatically do that, Carol, without any kind of authentication.
I wonder if it just is it not just like a boot, like a DHCP boot thing where it like boots up off the network and it gets a firmware from the central control machine and.
No, because it can be activated on a closed network, one that's firewalled out from the outside.
Oh, interesting.
And this is the weird thing about it. So I suspect, and I was going to put a Wireshark monitor on it, but we were pressed for time when we were installing this stuff. But I suspect, Kira, that it uses something like a secure shell key to log into the device, Kira, to configure it, or to get some sort of configuration information that pulls them from the server.
Well, I suppose we probably would have the answer just out there in the audience. So if anybody out there in the audience knows and wants to follow up with us, we'd be curious. How do they do that? How do they do that provision even when it's behind a firewall? That's a good question. I got one more follow-up story. This one's definitely a show me the money. We've talked about CoreOS, and I think it's a pretty cool project, and they're getting even more money now. CoreOS has raised $12 million. The CoreOS distribution just raised $12 million. $12 million is pretty respectable. Wow. Yeah. They announced $12 million a round of funding, as well as a new product called Tectonic that is based on Google's Kubernetes. I don't know what that is. Sorry, Kubernetes. What's Kubernetes, guys? Anybody know what that is?
Kubernetes.
What is it, guys? How come I don't know about it? Nobody knows?
Apparently no one knows.
Okay. Well, it's an open source.
I don't know what
it's apparently an open source project for container orchestration, but I have no idea. Like if it's like, I guess must work with like different containers. I guess I don't know.
Sounds like marketing speak. Yeah.
I'm sure it's like it manages all the different container tech, and everybody's got to make their own container orchestration system, and of course Google's got to make their own. CoreOS is now sitting at a total of $20 million in funding.
It doesn't surprise me at all, actually. Considering that Greg is participating in that project, he's just, the stable release kernel maintainer. Anyone wants to jump on that.
Yeah, they got great people behind it. They have a pretty clear idea, and they've actually got a pretty important problem they're trying to solve, too. Oh, Kubernetes.io, thank you. Okay. Well, I'm going to take a look at that right now. This is what I love about having a frickin' chat room. How cool is this? Thank you, Miker89. I will definitely read up on this. So manage a cluster of Linux containers as a single system to accelerate dev and simplify ops. Ooh, boy, doesn't that feel good. Let's do it again. Manage a cluster of Linux containers as a single system to accelerate dev and simplify ops. Oh, that's good. Good job, dude. That's really nice. So, yeah, I'll check that out after the show. Thanks very much. I'll try to put a link to that in the show notes, too. Well, good for CoreOS. And I wonder if it puts any heat on Docker. Because remember, CoreOS is working on Rocket and some things that kind of are a bit competitive with the Docker group. So in a way, it's sort of also kind of helping seed some competition to the Docker guys.
Well, there's one thing for unless Docker guys screw it up, they have the market first thing, and they already have this initial work to get it actually working on Windows and Mac, and that is an appealing thing for a lot of people.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on there. Docker's already got the market. They've already got sort of the industrial support. They've already got Red Hat behind them. They've got Microsoft behind them. They've got the staffing, the funding. But that doesn't mean there isn't room for an alternative. And if you think about it from the standpoint of some of these big infrastructure shops, you're definitely going to want some competition out there.
Yeah, I don't
definitely.
like the fact that I wouldn't like if Docker was completely overwhelmingly the choice, because then they would corner the market and they would control it.
Right.
And not saying that they would do anything wrong, but the whole absolute power thing.
Well, Ryan, you have concerns about Docker, right?
Yeah, the apparently just the way Docker's built, there are quite a few innate security vulnerabilities, which I think in their defense they're trying to address, but Rocket thinks it can really beat out Docker there, and Rocket is the container technology that CoreOS is working on, and they think they can make the biz case to enterprises saying this is way more secure than Docker, and so if you're going to trust somebody, trust us, and that's really where somebody needs to win, is in the enterprise space.
I wonder
don't think.
Oh, go ahead.
So I'm sorry, but I see as what is the market value proposition of CoreOS and Rocket versus Docker is that it includes a lot of kernel maintainers, and so if there is a need to change in the kernel, it's easier done through that project than through Docker.
That is a nice advantage.
Yes, I think that's the market proposition that they have compared with Docker. But other than that.
Ham, you have some feedback, so go ahead and I want you to mute your mic until you get that sorted out there.
Yeah,
thank you.
Other than that, honestly, Docker already has a market share, and it already has a product that is working.
Well, and I kind of go with what the chat room is saying, though. Docker has, even if let's just pick a company like Rackspace. Let's say Rackspace decided we're going to standardize on Rocket. And you can use Docker if you want to roll your own system with different Rackspace options, but they're going to standardize on Rocket. But I wouldn't be surprised maybe some big infrastructure companies go Rocket, and then when people are discussing standardizing software development, when people are on Red Hat Enterprise 7 but they need to develop for also Red Hat Enterprise 5, when people need to distribute software across their network on Linux boxes of different versions, I think Docker could play a pretty significant role there. When people want to roll infrastructure on top of these containers, I think Rocket might play a more significant role there, potentially. Maybe that'll be how it shakes out.
Here's the other thing. I'm not 100% sure, and I haven't inspected myself like I did with Docker on how actually Rocket implements certain measures, but Docker does have these things that the distribution still plays a role, right? You still have the Ubuntu Docker, and you still have the Fedora Docker container. What happens to the distribution if Rocket decides to go the other way? I'm not sure. Maybe then the distribution matters less, and if your point of sale is, bringing these experience together, you want to promote that environment.
Let me tell you why it's important in any respect is, for instance, we here where I work run most of the websites for libraries in Kansas. So unless they're a really big library, they host their website with us. And the problem has become that everybody wants to run something different. Some people want to run WordPress, some want Drupal, some people want to run, random stuff over here.
And they require different versions of PHP, or they require different stacks in
Ruby, different versions of everything. And then they want web apps. They're like, can't we offer genealogy web apps? Can't we offer et cetera, et cetera? And so what we're having to do is, instead of spinning up a new VM every single time somebody wants, some new web application spun up at all of these libraries, instead I just use, some hosts or CoreOS at the moment, and then I sped up whatever, container is on that. I give that to them. I say, it's yours. Do what you want with it, and nice. If you break it, it's yours,
Yeah, absolutely. But when you look at how many developers are targeting something, it's easier to, at least at this moment, and from what I've seen, more people are targeting Docker. Now, these may be wrong. These may be just a misinterpretation of the data that
I think it's pretty clear. And I think it'll probably remain like that for a while. All right, well, that's probably enough container discussion for one episode, because I know half the audience probably doesn't give a crap about containers, and the other half does. And so hopefully we've entertained at least one half. But I find it to be obvious that the Linux container space, for some reason, is on fire, even though BSDs and Solaris have had it for a long time. Just goes to show you, doesn't matter. I don't know what it is. Like, they don't get the traction. Like, the people just don't care. But Linux does it. All of a sudden, it's a huge deal. It's a multi-million-dollar industry, and you've got multiple different companies now that are getting multi-million-dollar fundings and inspiring weeks.
Because of GPL.
Yeah, maybe because of the GPL. I don't know. Maybe. But it's very interesting because I know the BSD guys are going like, hello, jails, guys, anybody? And then the Solaris guys are like, yeah, well, we had zones back in the 90s, back when you guys were learning arithmetic. We were putting stuff up in zones. So I don't know. I think it's just the fact that Linux has the traction. It's sort of like Linux has the market advantage. Linux is the cloud OS for the world. Yeah, Docker Hub doesn't hurt either. Right, that makes a big difference. You're right, and I will add, and this I think Docker proves to us how critical, and now Rocket too, but Docker. Let's stay with Docker. Docker proves to us how critical closing that 10% gap is. Taking what can be set up by an admin with comp files and some kernel features, and closing that uncanny valley to where it is automated and I'm checking things in and out, sort of Git style, and it has an API I can write to and a community around it and a company. All of those things are fundamentally important to market adoption, and I believe that is why the BSDs never closed the gap. They never got excitement because there was just that 10%. And that is so often in open source where we get almost all the way there, 90%. All of us in the community, we see the beauty of it, and we'll put it in production. It'll be in production for years. Look at jails in production for years. JupiterBroadcasting.com has been running in a BSD jail for like 3 years now, right? I mean, it has been a thing in production for a long time. Nobody gives a crap because honestly, they didn't close the 10%. I think that makes the difference. That's I suspect. And obviously, yes, it's GPL, yes, it's Linux, yes, it's the market adoption of Linux. All of these are core components, but making it something that just as an example, I've never demonstrated setting up a jail or a Linux container. I've never shown you the power of LXC on the Linux Action Show before, but when Docker was a brand new spanking thing, one of the first things we did is I sat down with my Archbox and I set up an Ubuntu environment in my Archbox. And I was like, check this out. And I do it by doing this. And then I issue this command and it starts the environment. And I issue this command and it starts an application in that environment. And it thinks it's on an Ubuntu box, but it's actually on an Archbox. And that was impressive because you could wrap your brain around it. It was productizable. And that made the difference. And I think now, here we are, a couple of years later, and these guys are making millions of dollars.
So basically, you're saying that it's a matter of being presentable. Option A, option B, which one is presentable to a VC?
Closing that gap, right? Well, making it usable by more people. By closing that gap, they broke through several layers of markets, right? They went through they broke through the very high-end sysadmin to your average sysadmin, even your own frickin' enthusiast, to your employee who works at Red Hat, who's not even really all that. He's a sales guy, but he knows he's got to use Red Hat, so now he's using Docker, to your developer level, right? And you broke through all of these different markets when you made it that much easier, and that was what it took. But that's the hardest part, is that final 10%.
Well, and 90% of sales is presentation.
Boom. It's prophetic. It's just amusing. That's man. I just love it. All right. Well, before we go too far, actually, this would be a good spot to mention DigitalOcean. They use the hell out of Docker and also CoreOS. In fact, they work directly with the CoreOS project. I guess CoreOS provides these official channels to platform providers like DigitalOcean. I might be getting some of the terminology wrong. This is kind of my rough understanding. Is they have these different channels, and so DigitalOcean is like they get it straight from the tap. They get it right from the tap from the CoreOS project. And then what's beautiful about the CoreOS design is obviously you continue to roll the base OS, keep the applications in a container. Bob's your uncle. You're not even worrying about your application breaking. Meanwhile, your security updates are getting applied. It's a beautiful thing. Now, let me tell you a little bit about DigitalOcean, sponsor of the Linux Unplugged program, because I want you to go over there and try them. It's really awesome. They're all based on Linux, using KVM for the virtualizer, SSDs for the I/O, so you have super fast I/O, tier 1 bandwidth at data centers all over the world. That's DigitalOcean in a snapshot. But what's really important is the value. It's crazy. So keep two things in mind as we go forward. All Linux powered, SSD powered, right? Boom. It's hot. And actually, here's a third thing. we can get you 2 months for free with DO Unplugged. So I guess keep 3 things in mind. DO Unplugged too. So what is DigitalOcean? They're a simple cloud hosting provider dedicated to offering the most intuitive and easy way for you to spin up your own cloud server that you're going to get root access with an HTML5 console. You're going to be able to start in less than 55 seconds. Seriously. And pricing plans are only $5 a month. That's your starting price. That'll get you 512 megabytes of RAM, a 20 gigabyte SSD, 1 CPU, and a terabyte of transfer. And their pricing plans are really logical. They just step up from there. Really simple. And they have data centers in New York, San Francisco, Singapore, Amsterdam, and London. You just get to pick from them. They're gorgeous. But it's really the DigitalOcean interface. This is the final piece. I was just talking about closing that 10%. This is the same exact thing. Right? They recognize that KVM is incredible and that Linux is a great platform to build a business on top of. Okay. That's not very much of a surprise to anybody listening to this show. That's kind of obvious. They recognize that incredibly fast data center connections are going to be key to a finicky audience. Okay, a little bit more insight required there, but not too surprising. That's pretty good. I'll give them credit, though, for making sure they got that part right. But the part that they really figured out is you can have all of those things, but if you don't make it insanely easy to do it, and also very accessible, so they've made a very straightforward API. In fact, they just launched version 2.0 of their API, and they give you access to everything you can do in the control panel. And the community's already done a ton of stuff around this API, so you can just take advantage of it if you're just like a lazy schmo like I am. I'm not going to write anything to the API. I don't need to. But this is where they closed the gap. They took the Linux technology, they took SSDs, they took those incredible data centers, and they wrapped it all together in this amazing, intuitive control panel. And you can replicate this control panel with that API. So if you've never even wanted to use it, you could just plug it into your existing management infrastructure or just write bash scripts all day long. I hear from people that they just integrate it into the pre-scripts before they run a system upgrade, so that way they have the API execute a system snapshot, and then the system snapshot completes, and then it continues on with the package manager upgrade. Well, it's a pretty straightforward update, and this says it takes them like 15 minutes to put together, and the script's available in the DigitalOcean community. You can go read all about it. Go over to DigitalOcean.com, and on top of all of that, they've got some of the best tutorials in the industry. They've hired editing staff to make sure they're top-notch, so you can really get a lot of value out of your droplet. DO Unplugged. Go use that. Get a $10 credit. Try out DigitalOcean 2 months for free. DigitalOcean.com. Big thanks to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the Linux Unplugged program. You guys are awesome. Oh, I know it, Matt. Oh, I know it. So I have been waiting for a long time to see the final version of the Dell XPS 13 Developer Edition, as they call it, drop. Because I took a big risk, and I ordered the Windows Edition, which I normally would never condone because I hate buying a Windows license.
Sure. But
I wanted to get on it early so that way by the time this laptop had hit, for the Linux users, I would hopefully have a good amount of time using this as a, machine that I spend, at least half my day on. Something, where I can have a pretty substantial opinion on it as a machine. And of course, the first flaw, the first wall I hit was the Wi-Fi.
I just about to say, your first thing you do is yank out the Broadcom and put something in Intel.
I don't know what it was. It was like Dell branded. I don't even know what it was.
Really? It's got to be a Broadcom chipset.
Yeah, probably, right? Yeah, and I think there was like a way to make it work if I downloaded some. Anyways, no, man. I just ordered an Intel, because it's PCI Express slots. You just pop off the bottom, and those little mini laptop PCI Express slots, and I just popped off the bottom. I put an Intel 7000 series Wi-Fi in there, which is a great chip, and includes Bluetooth and all that kind of stuff. So that was the main thing I ran into. But what I really wanted to start to get my head around was how the hell does Linux do with high DPI displays? Because I think 2015 is the year of high DPI. You got a lot of the different high-end laptop lines are doing high DPI. You got some desktop lines that are doing it. Dell's got their 4K monitor. It's going to happen. I guess LG's been talking about an 8K monitor. They're getting into manufacturing now. 8K. So I really wanted to know how the XPS held up. And the prices are out. It's available right now in the UK. It'll be available next week in the US. Damn it.
Oh.
Enjoy that, guys.
Ouch.
So it starts at $949 for the base price, $949 US. You get an i5. And then it works its way all the way up to $1,849. Then you get an i7, 3 gigahertz, 13.3 inch, which is edge-to-edge display, which is pretty nice. They call it the Infinity display. 512 gigabyte solid display, Intel graphics. It's the 550, so it's pretty good graphics. I can tell you. So if you're interested in getting this laptop, this ships with Ubuntu 14.04. I'll tell you this, a couple of things. It is definitely the best display I've ever seen on a laptop. It's sort of amazing. A few weeks into it now, I've just stopped kind of being like, holy God, this thing's incredible. But for the first few weeks, I was like, this looks like a picture, like a painting is sitting in my screen.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really
wow.
Linux is definitely not ready for high DPI. X seems to struggle with it. A lot of applications don't look right, or they have some tweaking that needs to be done. In my opinion, GNOME 3 does the best job right now. I haven't tried Unity a lot too, but Unity seems to, from the discussions I have had with the audience, Unity, you go in there, has a DPI slider, and that seems to work pretty well for a lot of people. So I bet 1404 will look fine on it. Your applications will look tiny though.
See, that was my question. It's like you could have the desktop environments just nailed down to a button, and that's great. But when you bring in an application that's incompatible, it just kind of feels like it defeats the purpose. I don't know.
Yeah, you can't put more than 8 gigs of RAM in it either. So here's the other thing, Matt. Well, because everything's getting scaled up to such a high resolution that your computer ends up working pretty hard. So normally something that wouldn't really tax a machine of this level of power ends up being a little more work than it should be. So like if you play a video, like a YouTube video or something like that, your fans kick on. Right. If you have a lot of text scrolling across the screen, and your fans kick on. So it definitely is powerful enough for the whole desktop environment to feel very accelerated, and the performance-wise, the desktop environment works well. I've been able to play some games okay. If I hook up a second monitor, I can't play any games. No gaming at all.
Sure.
Yeah. Some games like Torchlight 2 play just fine. I've even been able to play Borderlands, the pre-sequel, on it, actually fairly successfully at full resolution with things turned down. But yeah. I think it's a very good laptop. I think it's well built. I still don't fully know if I would go with Dell. It has, unfortunately for me, a few drawbacks that I haven't been able to fully resolve on my model. I don't know about the developer edition. For me, the sound is not currently working. I believe there is a way to fix that. I would suspect it's based on some grub flags and things like that, maybe blacklisting a module. I would bet their Ubuntu edition already has that done. So it might be if you were to wipe this, it might undo that. You could go make that modification yourself. So like right now my sound doesn't work. I don't really care because I use a USB sound card for anything I do seriously. So I haven't fixed that. So that's one thing to consider. And also the trackpad, you can make, again, adjustments, but the trackpad's not awesome. I just don't like the way it feels. I don't like the way it clicks. I don't really like the size of it. It's just a little bit too small. And every now and then, I just like it senses a touch when my hand hasn't touched it, but it's hovering too close to the trackpad, like when I'm typing. And
I hate that.
Yeah, it causes me to mess up constantly. And all of the extensions I have had tried to turn off the trackpad don't actually turn off the trackpad.
I used to have a touchpad script, and it's literally just a bash script you run that actually might help with that. I'll see if I can find it.
Maybe that'd be cool. Yeah, send it to me if you have that. What was that, Poppy?
Barton's put on his blog post that the A01 BIOS makes the trackpad a lot better.
I should totally do a BIOS update, huh?
Yeah,
Thank you. Good tip. You know what? I'll tell you a couple of things. The battery life is pretty good. I think I get about 7 hours or so. They say 15 hours, I think, something like that on their website. They give you some real bullshit number. It feels lighter than 2.8 pounds.
Is it dual core?
Well, it depends on which one you get, right? Because it has i5 up to i7.
I think all of the i7s are still dual core, though.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know that.
They do have anyone that's branded as an HQ in the i7 is going to be a quad. Anything with the U designation is going to be dual core.
There you go. So and then it's 4 with hyperthreading, I guess.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. And the other thing I think is a little weak is your hard set at 8 gigabytes of RAM, which is.
Oh, that's kind of. I mean, I guess for Joe average that's fine, but it's still limiting because you don't know where you're going to be a couple years down the road.
Yeah.
Maybe you need more.
Yeah. And Popey, so how does the whole SP1 thing work with Ubuntu? I think of it as
I think that's just 1404.1. It's the point release that we do that has the hardware enablement kernel and updated Xorg.
That's just Dell lingo for it then.
Yeah, it's just what they've called.
It's confusing. I don't know why they do that. Why confuse?
Yeah.
Are you thinking about getting one?
It's back on my list of possible laptops now that my ThinkPad's gone out of warranty.
Yeah,
it's certainly on my list.
And you are in the corporate sanctioned purchase window, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Once you've been at Canonical 3 years, you get a chunk of change to go and spend on whatever laptop you want, and so that's on my list, along with the ThinkPad X1 Carbon and a couple of others.
I just got an email over the weekend that I will be getting the Librem Rev 2 soon.
Ooh.
Yes. Shoo. Hey, Matt. Popey has a very interesting theory that he shared with me today during Tech Talk today. Have you noticed? Have you been to elementary.io? Have you seen this?
Not actually. I think it was just the other day. I mean,
elementary.io has a countdown for 3 days, 18 hours, 17 minutes, and 33 seconds as we record this show. And people have been sort of guessing what they think it is. Some people think it could be a Freya release.
That would be my theory, because I mean, really, what else would it be?
Wimpy,
right?
do you have any theories on? Oh, Rotten, you were going to say something. Go ahead, Rotten. I'll let you put it out there first.
Just saying it could be it just could be a new website release.
Okay, new website. Okay, Wimpy, do you have a theory on what it could be? No. Okay. I just don't want, because I think
I'm just going to guess it's RC1.
Okay, RC1 says Josh. Okay, go ahead, Wimpy. Nothing.
No, I don't have a theory.
Okay.
I've no
Hardware
idea.
partnership?
No.
All right. Okay, Popey, go ahead. You say it, Popey. You do it. Go ahead, Popey. Say what you think it is.
So, given that the Daniel Foray recently left System 76 to focus on Elementary full time, and bearing in mind that recently they landed something called captive login in Elementary, so that when you're in a cafe or hotel or airport or something, it makes it easier for you to get through captive portal internet connections. That makes me think that they're doing a hardware partnership for a laptop. I think it's going to be a Ultrabook style beautiful laptop pre-installed with Elementary.
I think that's totally it. I think you nailed it when you mentioned that. Of course, he formerly worked at System 76. Now he's working there.
That adds up.
And you look at the good work that Wimpy's doing for the Ubuntu Mate project, where they're going to have some hardware hopefully soon. And of course, the Mint project has hardware. This is becoming a thing. Like Popey, you have been observing this for a little while, and I think you're absolutely nailing it. This is a thing, and in all of their promo shots, they always have this very nice looking sort of, is it a MacBook? Is it not a MacBook? Generic looking laptop. I went a step further and I thought, wouldn't it be cool if the new Librem 13 was working with the Elementary guys, and it was going to be like the exclusive way to get the Librem 13, like the 13-inch version of the Librem 15.
That'd be smart for both parties.
I'm speculating this based on, just guesswork. And I think that, part of it is if he's left System 76, he's done so that he's not competing with them with his own company. I think it would make sense for him to leave. But
I wasn't even aware he worked at System 76. I thought it was Cassidy that worked there.
It is.
No, I thought they both did.
Yeah,
they both did.
They both.
Yeah. And Cassidy is now working full time for Elementary OS, right? As of, was that?
No, I think it's Daniel.
That was Daniel. Yeah, that was Daniel. Cassidy's still at System 76.
Yeah. So who knows? We'll have to wait a few days and see.
Yes, 3 days to be precise.
Just leave the counter running on.
I know, right?
Right?
I don't think it's going to be a.
Go ahead. You don't think it's going to be hardware?
I don't think it's going to be a Librem exclusive, though.
No. Okay.
Oh no, it might be hardware, but I don't think it will be Librem because they've announced that they're going to ship with school.
Yeah. I was just having fun.
Because they have a whole new website on their beta.elementary.io, which could be, it has a store page. It's only for t-shirts and stickers at the moment. It would be ideal to stick a laptop there.
Or it could just be a new website.
Crowdfunded campaign for a laptop, maybe.
Maybe
that would.
Yeah, or maybe they're just going to update their website and integrate their Patreon.
Yeah, maybe they'll just turn their beta site into a regular site.
Yeah, there you go. There you go, everybody.
Guilt Trip 2.0.
You have to be careful because you burn some serious capital when you do these announcements, and if it doesn't go anywhere, so you got to be careful.
Yeah, no, doing it for a website is a mistake. It's a 101 mistake. Don't. No.
That'd be funny to follow up on that next week, though. The solid and continuous drum beat goes on for Linux Fest Northwest 2015, April 25th and 26th. Linux Fest Northwest 2015, April 25th and 26th. Because I want to see it, so that's why I keep talking about it. I just have a really quick update. Thank you to everybody who went to meetup.com/Jupiter Broadcasting. We now have 77 people there. I'm going to declare the meetup officially a success, and we're going to keep it around. In fact, 79 of you now, as I refresh the page, have gone to meetup.com/Jupiter Broadcasting, and that's a good thing, because guess what? Linux Unplugged. Hold on, I'm going to do some quick math, so if I'm wrong, forgive me. But I think as we do episode 87, that would technically mean, assuming we don't miss a week,
right?
Episode 100 is a lucky 13 weeks away. And if I am doing my math correctly, I think that puts us like early July, like July 7th. Let's see what today is. Yeah.
Sounds plausible.
Okay. So I'm thinking around then, we do episode 100 in person, and we organize here on this meetup page, meetup.com/Jupiter Broadcasting. We'll celebrate episode 100 of Linux Unplugged in person if everything goes as planned, and we will coordinate on this meetup page. Right now, it's Linux Fest Northwest. In the future, it'll be events when we travel to your area, and things like episode 100 of Linux Fest. Or, I'm sorry, 100 of Linux Unplugged. And, of course, the chat room will probably double-check my math for me.
Gives a rough idea, though, right?
So I'm really happy. Like, with 70, 80 people, I think that's totally worth keeping that meetup, even though there's a monthly fee. It seems pretty worth it to me. So
I think so,
yeah. Thanks, everybody, and can't wait to see those of you who are going to make it to Linux Fest, and we'll do updates for Linux Fest there. Boy, episode 100, lucky 13 weeks. I think that's right. It's been an amazing ride, and one of the reasons we're able to get that far is because of our next sponsor, and that's Ting. Go to linux.ting.com. Why? Well, because putting Linux in your browser's URL bar is awesome. And putting linux.ting.com in there supports this show and gets you a $25 discount off your first Ting device. Or if you have a Ting-compatible device, you're going to get some Ting service credits. What is Ting? Oh, I'm sorry. Did I get ahead of myself? I thought you knew because it's so awesome. Ting is mobile that makes sense. It's my mobile service provider and Matt's mobile service provider. I've been using Ting for over 2 years, and I love it. I just recently got up on the Ting GSM beta and my Nexus 5. My Nexus 5 has like dual personalities. Like all of a sudden, it's just its whole life. It's walking around talking CDMA. No, CDMA this, CDMA that. It's better with the trees. Pacific Northwest has trees. CDMA is better. And then one day, Ting releases the GSM SIM for $9. Well, Ting's got no contracts, no termination fees, and you only pay for what you use. So I was like, well, what's the cost? $9. I could try it with the GSM, and I'm really out almost nothing. So I got the GSM SIM, pop it in my Nexus 5, set that bad boy up for GSM, and now all of a sudden my Nexus 5 is a totally new person. It's walking and talking GSM, putting CDMA down like a clown. It's ridiculous. I feel empowered because I've got everything. It's unlocked. It's my Nexus 5. I'm paying just for what I use. Ting just takes my minutes, my messages, my megabytes. They add them all up at the end of the month. Whatever bucket I fall into, that's all I got to pay. And they have a great control panel that lets me manage all of that. And I nickname my devices so I know when Rikai's been calling the ladies too much or if I've been downloading too much Spotify while I drive between the studio. I can manage all of that stuff using my Ting dashboard. And if I ever get stuck, I don't worry because they got no hold customer service. You just call them at 1-855-TING-FTW anytime between 8 a.m. or 8 p.m. and a real human being answers the phone. They're empowered to solve your problems. They're not just a bunch of drones that read a script. That ain't how Ting roll. They're like, hey, you're a phone geek? Oh, you are passionate about phones? Here's an idea. Why don't you work supporting phones? You like Android? All right, sucker, sit here. No, I'm kidding. I love you guys. I just could never do it. That's why I love you guys. 1-855-TING-FTW. Try it. You can talk to a real human being. And after all of that, if you go to linux.ting.com right now, and you already have a compatible device, and chances are you do because they have so many GSM devices, you get a $25 service credit. But you're like, Chris, bro, man, I made a mistake. I went over to this duopoly. I signed up for this horrible contract where they extort money out of me. I feel like a clown. I'm like, man, I hear you. Here's the thing. Ting has an early termination relief program. What? Yes, an early termination relief program. They'll help you pay to get out of your contract because you know why? Ting frickin' hates contracts. They're silly. Go to linux.ting.com. And a big thanks to Ting for sponsoring the Linux Unplugged program. Woo! Man, those guys. Loving it. I'm telling you, though, I'm feeling like I'm ready to upgrade to a Cadillac. The Samsung S6 is calling my name. I want to put that S all over the Ting network. I tell you what. I just want to put it all over. Just get all over the place.
Yeah, I've been looking at actually investing in one of those little GSM doohickeys because I got an old Razr, in conjunction with my existing Ting phone. I have this old Razr. It's like, well, this might be kind of a nice to have as a backup phone.
I was thinking if I don't go S6, if I don't go Cadillac, why don't I do this? Feature phone with battery for days, because Ting, you can get them from Ting for like under $70. So I get a feature phone with battery for days, and then I get a Nexus 9 with the GSM SIM, put the Ting GSM SIM in the Nexus 9, so I do my telegramming, my hangouts, my web browsing on the Nexus 9, and I do my old school phone calls, which I do like 2 or 3 a day of tops, maybe, from my old school flip phone with battery for days. I'm just saying I could do it. Why not?
Makes sense.
Battery for days. Okay, so I had a real rough day. I came in, and I could not get my computer to start. I sat down at my desk, turned on the nice Asus monitor that I am quite proud of acquiring. I stare at a screen, And it's nothing but errors, Matt. Nothing but errors.
No.
And if you're watching the video version of the Unplugged program, I'm going to pull those errors up on my screen right now. It was devastating. It starts as this. Booting the Linux kernel. Starting version 2.18. Well, yeah, you know what that is. And then, hold on a second. Info, task mount 175, blocked for more than 120 seconds. Uh-oh. Task btrfs transaction 197 blocked for more than 120 seconds. And that's all it ever did. And then now of course. So here's Chris's conundrum. Chris has a show he has to go to, and he needs a computer right now. Like, I do not have really like so here's what runs through my head when my most important computer doesn't boot. I think to myself, well, I should go grab a live USB stick and probably boot in there and see if I can get the main OS up and just, maybe root in there and get everything I need and then fix it later. Like, I'm starting thinking, like, maybe I could, like, zombify this thing and, like, prop it up and, like, get in there, get my work done for the day, and then, like, get out before the whole thing collapses out from underneath me. And I'm like, nah, I'm not going to do that. Okay, so I'm starting to think, okay, what are my other options? Well, I had just the night before installed Ubuntu Mate 15.04, Beta 2, I think it is right now. I think that's the current one.
Sounds right.
Yes. And so I had a USB stick already flashed. I love, you know what, also, props to Ubuntu Mate. Really, I think the only distro where you just go to their website and the download links and you put DD Rescue up there, the command to run. And you just make it real clear. Use DD Rescue to write this to an ISO to a thumb drive. Everybody else always recommends DD, and a lot of times they don't just clearly put the command right there above the download links. It makes it so clear, and the fact that you also update the name of the ISO image, so you literally could just copy that whole command, is just brilliant. It is so helpful because I myself always end up using DD, and I forget to use DD Rescue, which is way better to write an ISO file to a flash drive. So anyways, props to Mate. So I had this thumbstick ready to go, and I needed to get working right here, right now. So I stick the Ubuntu Mate 15.04 USB thumb drive into my rig, I reboot, and I get into the desktop environment. It's pretty snappy. In fact, it's unbelievably snappy. It's so fast that I was grousing to Rikai, who was standing over me because I'm, he's trying to console me as I have been mortally wounded, and and this gray screen comes up, and I start grousing. Oh man, now I gotta wait for the fancy grub screen to render because this monitor is so large that anytime there's a big graphical grub screen comes up, it slowly paints onto my screen, and I'm sitting here grousing about that. And what I realized was that actually wasn't the case at all. What I thought was the grub screen was actually X11 starting. It had booted so fast that I thought I was waiting for grub, but I was actually waiting for the entire desktop. It was amazing. It boots so fast. It was so cool. So I was like, all right, install. I'm like, after that, I was like, that's it. That's all I needed. I just needed my computer to be really fast, and I just want to get back to work as fast as possible. I've got to do some clipping. And so I installed Ubuntu Mate on my main workstation. This is my rig up in my office. And I used it for a couple of days. A day? I think I used it for a day, actually. Mm-hmm. And I ran into a couple of issues. First of all, here's the thing you don't want to do. It's not really a great idea to use a beta version on your main workstation because so many of the PPAs out there don't work with it. They expect you to be on a released version of Ubuntu. So as soon as you start setting up PPAs for like themes or like a calendar widget or whatever, you just start getting 404s in your apt-get update like an animal constantly. It's just a horrible mess. And then you end up having to go out there and pull some of them out. So that was a bit disappointing. And things like Telegram not working sort of were deal breakers for me. And I ended up going back with Antigross because it was so early in the process I could jump back. So now I'm sort of at square zero and sort of setting up and trying to get advice from the audience on what should I try? Because I haven't set this machine up in about a year and a half. So what would you try at this point? And I've already got some base stuff on there. But I have to say, it was pretty slick. So a couple of things I did in Ubuntu Mate 15.04 is I used Mate Tweak to turn on Compiz and to set my style so it had like a more of a bar layout that I liked quite a bit, and that was really, really easy to set up, really slick. I decided I opted to use the new Mate menu, and I was pleased to see that Super Key activated that. So I was all really good. So the main problems I ran into with the Mate menu were like sometimes when I'd hit the Super Key, it would pop up behind other windows, so when I would type, I couldn't see the results. and sometimes it was a little delayed in popping up. So I'd probably still, if I was going to stick with that desktop, I would probably use a dedicated launcher like Synapse or GNOME or whatever the hell. But it's such a nice setup. Like I was using that, and I could physically, I just felt my computer was like, it felt like it was running faster, and I really was impressed by that. So Ubuntu Mate edition 15.04 is looking really sharp. I ended up keeping it on the computer I'm setting up for my son, so he'll be running that for a while. And I'm now running Antergos with GNOME 3 on my main Office workstation. And it was tough. It was really tough. Now, did anybody catch that error message and maybe what was the problem?
Yep.
Oh, you did, Popey?
Yeah, so how long did you leave it after the 4 minutes and that error message coming up?
I actually left it overnight. And it
like
just,
that, overnight?
Yeah, and it just kept repeating the same message.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So my home server running btrfs does that now and again, and all I do, but that's after it's booted, and it's fine and it's up. I just SSH in and echo 0 as it says, and then I never see that error message again because it's only an informational message to say, holy crap, there's a truckload of I/O going on right now.
Here's what I think it is.
It's busy.
I think Blackout24 is calling it right now in the IRC, and I think Groove Chicken in our subreddit called it. Another btrfs gotcha has been added to the gotcha wiki entry for btrfs.
That's how I see it.
Stable kernel versions 3.19.1 can cause a deadlock at mount time. That's one of the new gotchas in the btrfs. Nice. And I think this is exactly what happened to me. I think because I'm on a rolling release. I'm on a rolling release.
And they wanted the packages with systemd and btrfs, right?
What's that?
And they want to do the packages with systemd and btrfs, right?
Yeah. So there are workarounds. So if I would have looked this up, there's workarounds. But you know what? This is what I came to. I am so effing done with effing btrfs. It is not even funny. So when I was like, you know what? I don't care that I can fix this. I'm going XFS. So what I decided to do is my boot partition, which is about 250 megabytes, is extended 4. Everything else on the system is XFS. My root file system, my home partition, my editing partitions, my gaming, all XFS, only XFS. btrfs is dead to me. This is the second system I have, quote unquote, kind of soft lost to btrfs. As in, I could have fixed it if I really effing wanted to. In the Bonobos case, I would have had to format. And in this case, I would have had to do a workaround for the timeout. And it's stupid. It's a clown file system. It's nowhere near ready, close to quality of ZFS. And XFS has a rich history behind it and probably has another 20 years left of development in it. So for my taste, I'm going XFS on everything that's important to me. My back-end storage, I'm not even going to use a Linux file system. I'm going to use ZFS.
Well, and that makes sense to me for a number of reasons. One thing that I thought was interesting is that when all these btrfs issues, it doesn't after a while feel like you're almost a battered spouse.
Well, I mean, I realize in some scenarios it's fine, and I realize if you have great backups, it's fine. But it is
because it's like, well, I can fix it. Well, he's gonna change. It's essentially what this is. Well, you just got to deal with this one issue, and it'll be better tomorrow. Because that's essentially what it is.
So often though, like generally software improves, but so Fedora 22, the server spin of Fedora will be using XFS by default rather than extended 4. Using XFS has been the default within LVM as part of the Fedora server technical spec. While Fedora 22 is finally going to go official, the default layout Fedora server 22 installations will be using XFS atop of LVM, while boot is outside the LVM setup. That's exactly what I'm doing. Boot is going to be extended 4 outside that, and I'm going to go just XFS, and I'm going to use LVM to do my drives, and this is, I'm done. I'm done with btrfs. I'm just going to use LVM and XFS and call it good. And I just feel like you can consider me the canary in the coal mine or not. I at this point will not be recommending btrfs to listeners. I tried it on, and I still have. The scary thing is that what I'm worried about now is I still have very important computers in production using btrfs.
That is frightening because, if you think about it, at the end of the day, you're talking about using a file system, not an application. If the file system's got issues that need to be corrected, there's red flags all over that. I'm sorry. So, yeah, forget that. Nope.
Anybody in the Rumble Room? Any opinions or thoughts on the file system topic before I move on to the software section?
And here I am on XT4, perfectly fine.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah, so am I.
Yeah, I know. It's just so boring.
I'm an old fogey, though.
The thing I like about XFS is, and we've gone in great detail before.
It's fast.
Yes, it's very fast. It handles fragmentation better too.
Oh, does it? Oh. No, that's
it has snapshotting, whereas Extended 4 does not.
Nice. And I've actually used XFS in production years ago, back when like Extended 2 was going to Extended 3, and RiserFS was still pretty popular, and I really never had any problems with it. CoreOS is also disk full errors. Yes, exactly. Yes, I know. CoreOS has ran into the same issues. And so if you are not really familiar with XFS, does it sound like an alien file system to you? Well, there is a really, really comprehensive write-up on lwn.net that I will share. I guess as a subscriber I can share a free link. I don't know if there's a limit or how it works, but so I've put a free link in the show notes because they just wrote it on the 1st by Jake Edge, and it covers the background of XFS, how it came from IRIX, the shift of XFS's development to Linux, really back in 2001, and in 2002 it was merged into Linux kernel 2.536. So it's been a available Linux kernel file system since kernel 2.5.36. That's way longer than btrfs. And the fundamentals of a file system is you really don't consider a file system to be production ready until it's been in use, 5-7 years. I mean, that's what conservative people that want to be able to trust their data considered. btrfs obviously doesn't meet that level of qualification. XFS does. And I think Linux is in a pretty pathetic file system state. From btrfs, glusterfs, Extended 4 just being sort of a stopgap measure. The fact that we can't get ZFS into the Linux kernel, where the hell is that going to leave Linux file systems in 5 to 10 years? It's pretty pathetic. And I'm not so sure btrfs is going to get there. Maybe it will, but it's not going to get there for me. And I think there's other other operating systems that are way ahead of Linux right now in this area, and I think it's kind of pathetic.
Actually, there is things in the baking area. I know that we kind of have everything in the baking section and stage.
Here's the thing: just a few minutes ago, you're the market lead guy with Docker, and now this is why it's pathetic, and this is why I'm actually a little panicky about it. Is because Linux needs to be about 5 to 7 years into a effing incredible file system right now. Because you can't even really seriously consider a file system until it's been in widespread production for a few years. And I'm sorry, but btrfs at Facebook isn't going to cut it for me anymore. I don't know. They have, you know what I think it is? I think Facebook has too narrow of a usage range to really be putting btrfs through its paces at scale.
It really is about different usages. Like when you're talking about in the server side, people care about one thing. When you're talking about the desktop side, people care about the other thing. So
I don't know.
You're perfectly fine and correct when you say ZFS. Maybe on the server side, currently is years ahead in so many ways. But when you're talking about having your system using Linux all over, of course, people are trying things that work with Linux, right?
I think,
and that's why there is a big push for btrfs. Otherwise, people wouldn't care.
I think a file system that has ghost metadata that eats up your system and says drive is full affects laptops, phones, and servers and VPSs
that's
just the same across the board. And I think a file system that falls apart when you update your kernel and has to have an ever expanding of gotchas that include constant regressions is not a production ready file system. Yeah. And those things affect desktop Linux servers. I don't care what your use case is. The only use case.
No, I'm asking just how many laptops are being shipped with Linux and 2 with btrfs. If you answer that question.
This is my point, is we don't have an answer to that question. There is no answer to that question. Like, we want to be doing those things? Well, are we going to ship it with btrfs? No, of course not. We can't. We don't have a serious file system.
Yeah. I disagree on that stance, though.
At this point, it'd probably be safer to format
a regular user, ext4 does whatever you
fine.
need.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, you know what? HFS does whatever you need, too. HFS plus is fine. It's fine.
Most people don't care.
I would rather use
let's face it.
I would rather use NTFS. Of course, most people don't care. That's all we talk about is things that most people don't care about. That's our entire world is things most people don't care about. We care, though. We should care. And Linux should be better. This is the world's premier open source operating system, and we have the biggest joke file system on the planet. It is a joke.
Since we don't have the desktop market share, I think that the fact that there is efforts in the direction of having something that will work for the desktop as well, and something that does work for the server space, I think it's having in the baking stage something that is progressively improving is good since we don't have the desktop market share. I mean, we will have the things to enter that market with strength. We currently are not in the market, but it's not because of the file system. Because if that was the cause, the only reason we weren't in the desktop.
No,
well, definitely,
no, absolutely not. And I think it'd be silly to talk about that. What's really more important is the server market share that we're going to lose to FreeBSD and ZFS. But Ryan, I wanted to give you a chance to talk about your concerns with btrfs.
Well, I've had one bad experience, but to be honest, it was similar to yours, where I was running something that was, living on the bleeding edge. But I've had this laptop that I've been running. It's a System 76 laptop, and I've been running btrfs and not running Arch. I'm running. I jump between Evolve and or Solus, sorry, and Arch, and I've never or not Arch, Ubuntu, and I've never had a problem so far. Maybe it's because I'm not sitting right there on the bleeding edge.
I would say too, if you're gonna, here's my bit of advice. If you want to use btrfs, use an LTS kernel. And I think it'll probably be safer because I don't think the LTS kernels are going to introduce major btrfs errors. So if you've decided that btrfs is fancy enough for you, you maybe want to consider an LTS kernel. Here's what I've decided to do. So I'm going to do rolling release again, but I'm going to stick with a better file system, XFS. Currently running GNOME 3.14.2 with Chrome and Firefox, and basic packages like Samba, Fuse, Dropbox, Infidelity fonts, Handbrake, Fish, Git, Harupad, YouTube download. I have a couple of things I wanted to get your all opinion on here. I've got two 600 gigabyte 10K RPM SATA drives that I would like to software mirror or something to use for my editing and Steam library. And I was curious what the Mumble Room thought I should use as far as software rate. Currently, my thought was LVM and then format it with XFS, but there's MDM admin. There's a lot of ways to skin that cat under Linux. So does the Mumble Room have any opinions on the best way to take advantage of those two 600 gigabyte drives? And remember,
use btrfs.
I've actually gotten that suggestion, and I'm going more for speed, not redundancy too. So I'd probably use like a RAID 0. No? Okay. Well, I think I'm going to do LVM.
Well, if you want to get change to happen in this area, it's gonna take conversations in the community like this one, and with those guys who run the different distributions like Ike and other people contribute to distributions, of trying to decide what really serves the end user best, at least in the desktop space. In the server space, they think about this more. They've already made decisions.
Yeah, for sure.
I think in the desktop, actually, OverlayFS has a very if they can make it actually happen, it's one of the most appealing things. It's like you having the ability to have sections in your file system, but you don't have much work or configuration to do, which deal with different data differently, like media files being handled internally as large blocks, and that's faster to access those, and smaller files to have, like there are the system files, to have redundancy, btrfs-like.
Yeah.
And these are the capabilities that file system has that for a regular user probably matter more, because he doesn't want to manage things. He just wants to have the diversity of files he uses daily and use it and still have same speed or better speed for each type of file specifically. So I think that there's no other place currently doing a file system like that.
So that could be something maybe like to toy around with. That sounds like, that could be an area to play with some more. I've noticed a couple common packages that I don't currently use that the audience is using a lot of in this subreddit thread. rTorrent seems to be the popular BitTorrent client, followed by qTorrent.
That would be.
Yeah, not too surprising. A lot of people using Fish, the shell. I use Fish as well, Fish shell. So that's not, and a lot of MPlayer or MPV. And I've noticed, of course, a lot of things like Redshift or Xflux, VLC, GNOME tweaks. Of course, Emacs and Pi, Samba, Plex, Steam. So here, when I first get my machine set up, I find I have to do a couple of things. First, I install Packer or PackAUR, then I install Dropbox, and then I install Chrome, and that gets me super far. Chrome and Dropbox alone, I'm a little ashamed to say, have really made reloading my machines a lot simpler. And then after that, I layer on BitTorrent Sync or whatever, or CFile, and for this machine. This machine uses CFile. And I don't know how comfortable I am with that. because I'm getting my.
It does feel like you're married to it a little bit, right? Because if something goes away, Dropbox does a wonky and whatever is no longer an option. Then what?
And plus, it's like here's my free Linux workstation that becomes functional because I set up Dropbox in Chrome.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Feels a little, but then again, maybe it's just not something I shouldn't worry about. I don't know, but so within a couple of hours, I was able to get up and running again, and the AUR does make getting software installed very fast, but. I ended up going with GNOME 3 simply because I'm looking forward to GNOME 16, but I seriously considered just going Mate. I wonder if I would be able to get a Mate experience as good as the Ubuntu Mate one. I don't know if I would. Maybe I'd be left a little unsatisfied. So I went GNOME 3 because I want to try out GNOME 3.16. Now the only big piece I'm missing is like, what should I do in case this ever happens again? And I don't like, should I do DD backups? Should I do image backups using like a part image or Clonezilla? I mean, what should I do?
I think if it's a machine that you need up and running like in a reason without having to screw with it, I think an image backup makes sense in that regard. But at the same time, you then have to think about, okay, what are you backing up? Are you backing up actual data partitions as far as like your user data, which obviously that needs to be far more frequently in the weekly you might be doing with your.
Well, and I almost wonder, like, would it be possible to do something like, oh, my drive died. I just plug in this USB drive and I could literally just boot from that.
You could, yeah.
Wimpy, you had something, our snapshot. Go tell me about that. I know I'm semi-familiar with it.
Yeah, if you're backing up, you're talking about backing up data or bare metal restore.
I don't know. I'm curious if maybe I actually want to go full bare metal just for total, like, all my software's right back where it is. Everything's totally configured.
Yeah. So you were saying about you depend on Chrome and Dropbox. So I depend on Firefox, LastPass.
Yeah, LastPass,
and then still at the moment, BitTorrent Sync, which I use for syncing my roaming profiles. And once I I need Firefox, BT Sync to get to my password for my main BT Sync server to get my keys, and then sync my roaming profile. And once I've got that, I'm back up and running. All of my applications are configured. So I don't need to do a bare metal restore. I can do a fresh install and then just plonk my profile on.
I am considering just doing that. I am considering just doing that, but I feel like there's such a long tail of configuration after a clean install because I have so many little things I need to do, so many little tools that I have to install, that it feels like if I could just plug something in and almost lose no time, it would be such a nice dream.
So. Well, our snapshot's great for incremental backups of your home directory, for example. Your first backup is a full backup, and everything thereafter is an incremental, and it uses hard links. So it uses rsync underneath and hard linking, so that the subsequent backups are only the incrementals. And consequently, because it's all hard linked, you just go to any dated folder and you can just copy the whole thing out of there, so you can rsync the whole backup folder at whatever point you want to restore, and it all is just there, simple. So there's no untar it, find this version, what was my encryption phrase, so if you want to stick it on an encrypted USB drive, that's kind of simple. And then you've got things like Deja Dupe if you want to send it offline, fully encrypted, and Duplicity is what runs underneath that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a Duplicity guy myself.
I just can't decide, do I want just the data? Because I kind of have the data solved now through different sync services. Or do I really want, a full turnkey, plug this USB drive in and I boot up solution? I feel like that's kind of the way I go, and I'm not sure.
Well, maybe we're overthinking it. Maybe you just need a generic setup on let's say, an external drive. Okay, it's blank, it's empty, it has no personality at all. And then you're syncing your profiles to that drive. Oh shit, everything went to hell. Okay, whoop-de-doo. I plug in that drive.
Grab my escape hatch drive.
You're done. It literally takes, and the entire downtime is as fast as it takes to boot up into it.
Yeah, Mondo Rescue, Micro89 in the chat room is pointing out Mondo Rescue, which is one that I've talked about a couple of times.
Mondo's cool.
I don't know if is the project still getting updated?
I think it is.
Oh, it is. Look at this. Mondo Rescue version 3.2.0 came out on 2015 of January 3rd.
Then there's also like Amanda, I think.
So you know what? I might give Mondo a try after the show tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a few other ones out there.
But I'm just saying, for the short term, consider that though. I mean, literally, at least it solves all your issues quickly.
Yeah,
just done.
It would get me up. I'm worried about the fine nuances of all like having like all my GP Cheeky set up and Thunderbird and getting like all my messaging programs and all my wine hacks. Like I have several programs that like take a lot of custom versions of wine and.
I would do both because I'm paranoid. I would do both because then you have your nuances done with your imaging. Yeah. But then it's like, okay, I don't really have time to wait for that restoration. I just need to plug and go.
Yeah,
you have you have a quick and dirty machine. Yeah.
Daredevil, you want to make a comment on torrent clients?
Yeah. I'd just like to mention Tribbler.org. It's kind of a new project, and they are pretty much backing up using the similar infrastructure to Tor. Is like for you to search torrents. So you don't have to go to the tracker anymore and pretty much making it impossible to shut down trackers.
Interesting.
Wow.
I just linked in chat.
So Ryan,
I like it.
That's an interesting project.
Tribbler.org, Tribler. Ryan, you had a comment on building backup into Linux.
Yeah, I mean, what Ike had said before that he's been considering and working on throwing something into Solus right into the actual distribution that can handle backups. Right, yeah. I know that Ubuntu had Ubuntu 1, and there was some really good perks to that, but we really are lacking in something that's built into the actual operating system that allows you to do all sorts of things like jump back, easily to a previous state, and also, handle your normal backup. And so
it definitely could be a great feature add for a distro to bring in and say, look, our distro has really solved this problem. You know what maybe I should do, Matt? Maybe this would solve my problem. I got an idea. I should just get my butt over to Linux Academy. They've got courses on backing up your Linux rig, building it with rsync or whatever else you might need. Go to linuxacademy.com/unplugged. Get our special 33% discount. Linux Academy is a sponsor of the Unplugged program because they know you guys are exactly the audience they need to reach out to. And I love the fact they're giving you a 33% discount to really make sure that you go try it. That's a great value because they keep adding content all the time. Plus, you get access to their entire content catalog. You're going to get step-by-step video courses, downloadable comprehensive study guides, and when you need it, their labs just spin up for you your server on demand. You get SSH access to that bad boy, and you're working with the real technology. Plus, since you're choosing from 7+ Linux distributions, you're either going to be familiar with your environment, or you're going to help bridge the knowledge gap you need to take over a different environment. You get to keep track of your progress as you go along. I think this is a really nice dashboard. It's a really sweet system, and they can also help give you little reminders like, hey, bro, you got a test coming up. You should probably study. I'd be like, oh, thanks, Linux Academy. You're right. I will study. It's nice. They have so many great courses, too, and they really follow the industry trends to make sure that the technology that they're covering is the technology you could go out and implement and get a job, get educated, or maybe even get certified. They have so many great success stories. I have this one here about they have the LPIC 1 and Linux Plus exams now. You can go take them at Linux Academy and then go take the certification and be officially certified. That's pretty cool. And in fact, they have another big thing coming up on April 16th at 9 p.m. Central. A big content update over at Linux Academy. New stuff coming all the time. It's a really cool platform with solutions available for those of you who have very, very limited time. And trust me, I know how that feels. For those of you who have a lot of time on your hands, they have great packages for you as well. They have community members that are packed full of JB audience members that can help you when you're having a hard time. And they have people that are genuinely passionate about the subject material. linuxacademy.com/unplugged. Take it up a notch. Big thanks to Linux Academy for sponsoring the Unplugged program.
And touching on them a little bit, so here recently someone pointed out to me something I didn't know, and they actually have courseware helping you to find work after you've been certified.
Yes, it is.
It's level associate, but yeah, it's literally how to get a Linux job.
It's pretty cool. And it's
my guy does hiring.
Lots of relevant stuff there that just make the resume look great as well. So we've been dancing around it this whole episode, but the Solus, there's a new project out there. Hey everybody, it's called Solus or Solus. Don't call it Evolve OS anymore. No sir, no sir. The project name has changed to avoid unnecessary legal action.
Oh boy.
So we have Ike and Ryan here. Ike, do you want to tell us what happened then?
So, yeah, that was a fun week. Yeah, I've really loved how this has really gone. So on April Fool's Day of all days, I basically got an email come through, and it said that I was getting a letter coming through as well, which is like, okay, this is just pure lols. So I was like, yeah, okay. So I ended up phoning up the people involved, independently, finding the phone number for this place separately. And it actually does check out. So I was like, so... Yeah, so the trademark is very, very much specific to the UK. So a couple of months ago, we were having problems with people, completely unrelated incident, by the way, but we were having problems with people, trying to assert ownership over the brand. So I took a couple of steps, and I basically went ahead and put in a trademark application, not to be a patent troll, but just to stop people trying to pull one over on the project. So that was like, so in the UK, that happens for a couple of months, and it's put up so people can, they can object to it and say, hey, we own that, which someone did. And it's held by the Secretary of State in the UK, and they own the trademark for OS, which I did not see coming.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
So,
Whoa.
I mean, I could understand if it was Evolve. Like, when I was reading through the letter, I was looking for the word Evolve. But no, it was for OS. I was like, are you kidding me? So yeah, I mean, that absolutely and utterly sucks. So it's like, that's one thing that Linux projects have traditionally done to avoid that kind of thing, like have a suffix of OS or Linux or something like that. So yeah, I mean, that absolutely and utterly sucks. So we went through on Google Plus for a couple of, I think it was about 2 days, asking for suggestions, doing on IRC, and we got absolutely nowhere with a fitting name. So I just went back to a name that we've used before, which was Solus, but without the OS part.
Oh, okay.
So you're saying that Elementary OS is also violating that trademark? Interesting.
No, that's not what I'm saying. This is UK specific, right?
Yeah, but if they ever get into that market...
No, it's not an international trademark. This is a UK application. So this doesn't affect anyone else abroad. And because the project doesn't have a legal entity, I am that legal entity.
Right.
So I represent it, and even if I had like the trademark and the website and everything done abroad, I'm still operating in this country. And I still fall under UK legislation, so I can't use that suffix, which absolutely sucks. But you adapt.
Yeah,
that's all you can do.
That's a hell of an April Fool's Day. And so how has the community responded to the name change? Everybody must be pretty understanding, I would assume.
Luckily, yeah. That does help. Like surefire way to kill your project. So there's been a few misconceptions about this. I did a couple of posts on Google Plus. One of them was compound irony, which you posted on as well. So I mean, everyone's been pretty good about it. The media, as it were, haven't done such a good job. They're saying it's totally unrelated to the old Solus West project, which is nonsense because Evolve. It's really hard not to say that. So that came from the exact same code base as Solus OS, the original Solus West, and with Solus West 2. So it was always a continuation of under a different name, but it was the only name I could go back to that people will still understand and not getting into trouble. So now it's the Solus operating system, not Solus OS. If people want to abbreviate that, I can't stop them.
Right. It's the Solus project, though, to be clear.
So
right?
it's the distro part of it is the Solus operating system.
Okay.
And it's run by the Solus project. Right, which is not a company or anything like that. It's just the Solus project, which also owns the Budgie desktop project and things like that. It was the only conceivable way I could come up with to get out of it. So someone's asked a question on IRC, why not Evolve operating system? So when I was looking into the whole name change thing, it basically, if we reduced our name or took away the uniqueness of it, as in Evolve OS, there happens to be this game called Evolve. So,
oh man,
yeah. So it's like, come on.
You could just lowercase the OS instead of being a suffix. It's part of the name, so it's Evolvios or something.
Right.
I can't even say it.
Evolvios.
Evolvios. Yes.
I'd kind of like to also add here that the community, at least the community members I spoke to who are already active in the project, especially like the art team, actually really enjoyed the opportunity to, especially the art team, actually enjoyed the opportunity to to take this as because Evolve, as it stands is when you think of Evolve, you think of like evolution itself and these different things like that. Whereas Solus has its own thing, so it allows a lot more branding opportunities that aren't necessarily tied down to that paradigm and everything. And so I know that's kind of not really any technical thing, but at least one sector of the community actually enjoyed the chance to reinvent and have fun with it. And that's a good, the community seems to have funded that. They were trying to be really helpful during the rename. And then now I didn't hear anybody really say this is bullshit. I'm leaving.
I'm out of here.
They kind of followed us into
what else can you do really?
The new age.
Yeah, it's not like it's your choice.
True.
So I mean, they just it's understandable, and it's just hard because I've never even thought of that, you guys. So it's understandable that mistake could be made to begin with. That's a hard way to go. But it's not the name. It's not the name that makes the project.
That's right.
I think you guys will be all right. So we'll follow. I have in the show notes, I have links to the new Solus project community page on Google+. So there's a new community page for people to follow, and I have a link to that in the show notes. And if you guys want to share any other links that people need to catch, just drop them in the IRC and I'll grab them and I'll put them in the show notes too. And then just stop by and let us know how it's going.
Yeah, I just posted a link that helps searching for trademarks across the world, not just the EU. Which might come in handy.
tmdn.org, and I will add a link to that in the show notes as well, tmdn.org. And speaking of links in the show notes, if you got bit by that btrfs kernel 3.19 timeout lockup issue thingy, I just got tweeted by somebody that did. I'll have a link to the fix that you could apply, so that way you don't have to reload your whole rigamadig. I'll have a link to that in the show notes as well, because that's not a lot of fun. And also, don't forget, there's also that great piece from LWN on XFS. I'm just saying. XFS for the future, XFS for the next 20 years, ZFS for everything else. That's all I have to say about that. All right, guys. Matt, is there anything else we need to cover before we get out of here? Any other shenanigans? Am I forgetting? I think that was everything.
No,
right?
I can't think of anything specifically. If you guys want to follow the stuff I'm doing, I'm always at matthartley.com. I do have a couple new things coming out, so subscribe via email or Facebook or Google+.
Yeah, and don't forget, you'll also be able to see Matt and I at Linux Fest Northwest. Linux Fest Northwest, I mentioned that. Oh, and you could talk to us live. Why don't you just come hang out with us live right now in our virtual go over to jblive.tv on a Tuesday. We do the show at 2 p.m. Pacific. Show up around 1:30, 1 o'clock Pacific. Pacific time, I know, right? Go to jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar, get it converted to your local time. LinuxActionShow.reddit.com is how you make this show better when you can't be here and contribute. We also have feedback threads over there. Love to hear your thoughts on all of that stuff, including the thread on the things I should install on my rig reload. Right? Jeez Louise. All right, Matt, I'll talk to you next week.
All right, see you then.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in this week's episode of Linux Unplugged. We'll see you right back here for episode 88 next week. I won't lie though, there's nothing like that fresh install feeling.
It's like underwear right out of the dryer, right?
Yeah, it is.
Am I alone in that?
And I installed the NVIDIA package, and I immediately could feel like it wasn't right. Like something's not right. Oh, I forgot libgl. Okay, I install that, and then I reboot again. Boom! Now I got a nice, smooth, accelerated desktop. I'm like, oh yeah, it's feeling good. It's feeling fresh. Yeah, I think that's nice. I think it feels real good and real tight, and like I just installed just the stuff I need. So I only so it's just real clean. Like I only have a few icons in my side dock. It's looking tight. I like it a lot.
Hey, Chris.
JBTitles.com. Yep.
I'm going to be sending you an email with some pictures of an Internet of Things device that I've been building with a group over here. I think you'll like it.
Is it a sex toy?
No, but it's built entirely on Linux. And all the code base will be open source, and maybe we can send you, it is hardware, so maybe we can send you a little unit to play around with.
All right.
That could be cool. Yeah, I was kind of looking forward to like a saddle with a pie attached or something, right?
We can't tell you not to use it for that purpose.
Wow.
If it is a toy, like you've got my email address, right?
All right, so btrfs Meltdown's not bad. Take Solus and Solus is not bad.
Just before I found the link that we mentioned in the beginning.
Yeah,
I'll show you.
Right. Yes, the Microsoft, the Linux version one. Yeah, tell me about it.
I couldn't find in their blog, but I found at least in the answers. Maybe it was moved to the answers, or for some reason I found it related somehow.
Installing
in the
Windows 8 after 8 years of Linux. Let me share my experience with Windows 8 after using Linux only for 8 years. Oh my gosh. Oh, it's long.
I know.
Do me a favor, drop that in the Skype form.
In IRC?
Checked it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
Si, senor. Can I copy this? Copy link.
Oh, and that touchpad thing. I sent you the thing in the Skype.
Yes, I see that. Thank you. I will grab that.
Yeah, it's not a fix, but it might make it to where you're not bumping up against it. It gives a little bit of a delay, and it works. It's a hardware fix. So
I like that. Yeah. Right.
Sin client is our friend.
Huh. So what do you? Okay, so we could do what happened to Evolve OS. Well, that's not bad.
Yeah.
We could also do something that's like warning people about btrfs issues, because there could be people listening that run into this problem this week.
I'm sure. It sounds like it's pretty easy to stumble upon. I mean, it's a file system thing. That's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, you just need kernel 319 and btrfs, right? That's going to be.
I mean, that's.
Isn't this going to be brutal for a little while as people update? Is this not going to be a thing, or am I missing something?
Well, this isn't like, my Wi-Fi went down or something.
Well, yeah, I mean, or distros won't upgrade to kernel 319 for a while or something like that. But if you're on a rolling release or a beta release.